Welcome back to Stop My Crisis. I'm your host, Vivian Gaspar, and here with me now is Kevin Englert. Kevin is a special guest because he actually helped me. Kevin is a New Jersey property tax appeal attorney, and he just helped my family save $1,500 on our property taxes. So I wanted to bring him on to share with our New Jersey viewers how tax appeal is done and why you should actually use an attorney, what the benefits are, because he was our attorney. Kevin, tell me, how is tax appeal property tax appeal possible? That's a tongue twister. So how is New Jersey property tax appeal possible when the largest complaint New Jersey residents have is the high taxes on our properties, both commercial and residential?
Right. Unfortunately, Vivian, you can't really appeal the amount of your taxes. You can only appeal the assessment. That's all market driven. So you have to really talk to someone who knows what they're talking about, who can give you an idea of whether or not you will be able to successfully appeal your taxes.
Because of course it's not a given. If, for example, the township just did a reassessment, that makes it a lot less likely that you could successfully appeal your taxes. However, explain to me a little bit, because I think everyone should know what the tax rate is, how it interacts with your assessed value.
Right. Well, the assessment is how they calculate your total tax. There's two figures that go into that. One of them is your assessment, one of them is your tax rate. And basically your assessment is multiplied by your tax rate, which is $100 of tax value is multiplied by each your tax rate multiple times. So you get your total tax based on the assessment and the tax rate.
So the tax rate, does that change per township, per region? How is the tax rate arrived at?
Tax rate is individualized per town, and it consists of a number of components: the county tax, the municipal tax, the school tax. The school tax is the largest component of that, and some municipalities may have some other components to it, maybe a library tax or open space tax.
I see. And so how long does this process take? Take me through this process, because I'm sure every single person in New Jersey who owns a home is dying to talk to you and find out if they can get help.
Right. Well, the process can take one of two lengths depending on where you file. The county board is a much more abbreviated process, and that's primarily for homeowners. And then you have the tax court, which is a court of second resort if you don't get satisfaction at the county tax board. County tax board is a much quicker process. They're basically going to be very similar. There's a period of discovery. That's timed where the parties are sharing information, and then ultimately there's going to be a hearing where you present your evidence. Which is usually an appraiser if you're actually going to try the case. Depending on your attorney's strategy, he may or may not present a case at every single hearing. That's definitely the case in tax court, which can go on for many, many years, but a lot of times they're driven by settlement.
So by settlement. So let me ask you this. So many people have said, but foreclosures and short sales have all driven their neighborhood values down. And they feel that if their values have gone down, shouldn't that be reflected in their property taxes? What say you, an expert in this area?
Well, the problem is getting to an adjustment to value based on all of these foreclosures in your area. It's easy to look and say, well, I have 3 houses in foreclosure in my area, but when you can't, or at least there's going to be a difficult challenge with the tax court and or with the county board getting those sales considered as evidence, because they're basically looking for arm's length transactions. What are sales between a willing buyer and a willing seller who aren't under the duress of, say, a foreclosure or in a short sale? So those prices are not usually considered good evidence of market value of your home. Now, that's not to say they may not be of use in the process if you're trying to make an argument based on the fact that there's all these foreclosures, therefore there should be an adjustment to my value. And an appraiser would probably be able to best formulate that based on their experience as well as what actual transactions are coming down as.
So can a homeowner seek to appeal their taxes or property taxes on their own, or should they use an attorney? What is the benefit of using an attorney?
One of the best benefits of using an attorney is they can tell you up front whether or not there's a really good chance of you saving money, because the attorneys, by and large, they will review for free and then they will give you an idea of whether they think it's going to be worth it for that attorney to get involved, and that'll give you a good idea of whether it's going to be a good idea to go forward with the process, because the assessors...
So why should someone use an attorney to appeal their taxes? I mean, couldn't a homeowner do this on their own accord through research and having an appraisal done?
They could. However, the attorney is experienced in the process. They know what is good evidence, what's not good evidence, and it really relieves an extra burden from you to have someone who knows what they're doing, and at the outset of the case, get you to understand whether or not it's going to be successful for you to be able to go through the process, and whether or not the assessor may have gotten it right, because they do that.
So if you don't know if you're going to get it right, excuse me, if you don't know if this is going to be successful on your own, how likely is that the estimate that the attorney gives going to be accurate? I mean, is this done on contingency basis? Do you have to pay an attorney up front?
Yeah, and that's a good question. The costs that are associated with it, the attorneys who do this know that you're ultimately trying to save money, and so they're not going to recommend that you file a case where you're going to end up with $1,000 to $1,500 or more bill to your appraiser and your attorney if you're only going to save a couple $100s in your tax.
I wanted to find out if you feel that someone can get this done for their residents. What is the likelihood that a business, if someone owns the building, a commercial building, what is the likelihood and what is the process on a commercial building having their property taxes appealed?
Commercial buildings can be very similar to a residence, depending on where you choose to file. For most businesses, it's going to be more effective if you file directly to the tax court. Yeah, it's going to take more time, and you're going to have to go through that process of discovery maybe more than once. But ultimately, it's to their benefit to have that time where you can work with the town and potentially resolve it in a way that's going to be much more cost effective than if you go right out of the gate, get an appraisal report, and spend the money when you really could have resolved it amicably with the assessor or the town attorney without having to go that route.
Well, because of course, commercial buildings are usually valued a lot higher than a residence. So even if it's a smaller percentage, you're saving larger dollar amounts. So it is important for business owners because, of course, small business owners really need every piece of help to keep their businesses going and thriving because, of course, the end goal is for them to hire more people, since we all know that small business owners hire about 45% of the workforce. So you're also a great help to them as well. Thank you very much for coming on and sharing this area expertise and helping New Jersey homeowners with their largest concern, which is paying their property taxes.
Thank you for having me, Vivian.
Thank you, Kevin.
It's not just one person, it's a group, it's a team.
Just that simple act is transforming someone else's life.
It'll just make you feel so good about yourself.
It's one of the best feelings in the world.
Welcome back to Stop My Crisis, and here with me now is Peter Nagy. Peter is an expert in helping people with what they don't realize they need, as importantly as they need good health, good credit. Peter works for Credit Pros, and he has been an expert in this for quite so many years now. And I know because Peter's helped people in my own family, and it's amazing when you know the right legal formulas and loopholes and the details around it, the miracles that can happen, because so much nowadays rides on good credit and people really need this awareness now more than ever. Welcome, Peter. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Vivian. I really appreciate it.
Well, I would love to let's get started and ask you to explain to our viewers what are the key components of credit and what is really good credit versus not so credit. People don't know how low a credit score can go and how high what's the max?
That's a great question, and I'm going to answer that in a second. What I do is I'm a certified credit consultant, as you indicated, with the Credit Pros. We do legal credit repair, where a lot of companies are illegal because they're not owned and managed by an attorney. So we have an attorney on campus all the time that oversees our operations. And what we do with the Credit Pros is we can legally challenge and dispute all derogatory or negative information on a credit report that is inaccurate, unverifiable, or incomplete. Speaking to that, and most people don't know this, is that 79% of all consumers have errors or inaccurate information on their credit. That's 8 out of 10 people.
Wow, that is an overwhelming number. And considering all the various things that people need their credit from, everything from getting insurance, it's mandatory, like car insurance, and getting a loan, but everything in between. Heck, even getting a job nowadays.
Even getting a job, right.
They need to look at your credit. And so you're saying there's an 80% likelihood that there's discrepancies you're not even aware of that must get fixed because it's hurting you.
Because people don't check their credit on an annual basis like they should.
So to move on, what type of items can be legally disputed and challenged versus the illegal ones? What's the difference?
Well, basically, we find that anything that's reporting on your credit can be legally challenged and disputed. Okay, such as late payments, collection activity, charge-offs, repossessions, judgments, bankruptcies, tax liens.
Wow, even bankruptcies and tax liens can be removed.
Correct.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of story to that, but for example, if someone has a tax lien that is legitimate by the IRS,
of course,
all they have to do is basically enter into or engage into a payment plan. Once they produce that paperwork that they're fully engaged in a payment plan, by law, the IRS has to delete that negative information from the consumer's credit report.
That's amazing. People would think that once they hit any kind of tax lien with the IRS, they figure there's nothing that can be done. And that's just it's that cross to bear. They must deal with it. And you're saying that's not true because why wouldn't the IRS arrange a payment arrangement for anyone?
Right, sure.
They would. They'd be happy to work with them to get their money back. They want that money repaid to them. So then really important, how does someone establish credit scores if they don't have any? Because that's a problem for younger people or people new to the country even. Yeah,
that's a great question and a frequently asked question. I get parents asking me this all the time for their kids that are graduating high school, going into the college, and they really don't have any pieces of credit or trade lines right now. So what I recommend to everybody from the beginning is the easiest thing is to open up a secured credit card. You can go to a Capital One or you can go to your local bank, whether it's Wells Fargo or Bank of America. You open up a credit card for $300, for example, okay? You get the credit card. You use it every month for activity. Don't max out the card. That's a whole nother subject I'll get into at some point. But just use the card responsibly for activity every single month and then pay it off.
So what is the maximum number? Because credit scores are numbers.
Right.
So what is the maximum and the lowest threshold someone can have as a credit? And why are there 3 reporting bureaus? Who made them in charge?
That's Fair Isaac. That was established, oh my God, I don't know the exact date.
It's in my, right?
It was over a century. It was a while ago. But there are 3 independent companies that assess, it's all risk-based assessment. So you asked me earlier what comprises your credit score. The most important component of your credit is paying your bills on time. So if you draw a circle and you have your credit pie, 35% of that pie is simply paying your bills on time. So if you pay your bills on time, there's a very good chance that your credit scores are going to be good. The second biggest component are your balances on your credit cards. So it's good to have credit cards, but it's bad to max them out.
Okay, so where should you be? Should you be at 50%, 30%? What's the optimal percentage you should be using in accordance to the credit limit you have?
The best place to be, or the perfect place to be, is about 30% debt utilization. So an example of that would be if you have a credit card with a $1,000 limit, once you hit $300 of spending, pay it to 0 and then use it again. So you're at 30% utilization. So those 2 key components, that's about 65 to 70% of your credit score, what your credit score is derived from, the algorithms.
Right.
All right? The rest of the 35% are basically the types of credit you have, like installment loans versus revolving accounts, inquiries.
I see. So the question I want to ask you is, when somebody sees a number, just give me real quick, what's the highest number you can get, the lowest, and what is a decent number to reach?
I want to clarify something. There's 2 kinds of reports. There's FICO reports that a mortgage broker will pull,
Yes.
And then there's FACO reports that are consumer reports on the internet, like Credit Karma and some of these other websites. Okay, so a real credit report called a FICO report ranges from 350 to 850.
Wow, 350? I didn't know you can get that low.
I've never seen a 350, and I've also never seen an 850. I think 1 out of 1,300 people have an 800 credit score or higher. Okay. So, you know, that's the grid between 350 and 850.
So what would you consider as like an A or
Tier
a B?
1 credit? You
Tier
mean
1
like
credit,
Tier 1
yes.
credit? Right. So if you're trying to get a mortgage or a car loan or something like that, if you're north of 740, you're going to get Tier 1 credit, best pricing, lowest fees. It would equate to having an 800 credit score. So as long as you're a 740, you're good.
So that's what someone should ever strive for.
Yeah, that's what, right. Everybody should strive to be at least a 740, if not a little bit higher.
Great. So that's the most important information we needed to know. And thanks for coming on the show. Thank you,
Oh, it's
Peter.
my pleasure.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Hazardous chemicals. Could you be exposed at work? Employers are required by law to train you on the hazards of chemicals you work with, how they could harm you, and how exposure can be prevented. For information, go to njwec.org or osha.gov. This message brought to you by the New Jersey Work Environment Council.
Welcome back to Stop My Crisis. And here with me now is Joanne Lucas. She's a manager of staffing at Winston Staffing. And Joanne should really have a cape on because she's amazing. She's helped just a hair under 4,000 people find amazing new jobs, 3,960 to be exact, and over 2,500 small and medium-sized businesses find great new professionals to keep their businesses running and thriving. Joanne, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
And I want to help our viewing audience, since we're now rolling out of summer towards the new year, slowly but gradually. Here's what I want to know. Is this indeed a good time to evaluate where we are in our careers and find even better opportunities?
It's a fantastic time to find a job. All the employers are back to work. All the managers are there. The people who can make decisions are there. So once you interview, you can actually get a decision as opposed to waiting because everybody's away on vacation. The job search is interesting. You need to watch your social media. Look at your Facebook page. Is that how you want a current or a new employer to look at you? Is that how they want them to see you? Do you have a drink in your hand? Are you smoking a cigarette? Are you a player? Is that what you want somebody to know about you? If not, clean up your act. Make sure that when you present yourself, that you're presenting yourself in a very positive manner.
So isn't it true that so many times a possible employer could just look at your pictures, and if they see that you're a smoker, you don't know what they're thinking. They could think, wow, this employee against someone else could maybe take more smoke breaks and work less. So is that one of the reasons you're saying don't have those types of pictures on your social media? It's all the stigma that could be attached and perceptions that could follow.
Yeah. It's the same thing with anything to do with, again, unprofessionalism, partying. Just delete it for now. Everybody knows, your friends know who you are. That's not necessary because employers at this time do look at your social media to make sure. Also make sure that your email address is proper.
Oh, so no happy pappy 5, right?
That's
at gmail.com.
That's right. You wouldn't believe some of the emails I get. It really should eliminate religion. It should eliminate any kind of drug use.
You're kidding. People actually mention drug use in an email address?
It is amazing what people put on an email address. It really should be your name, last name, @gmail.com. And try and use, as opposed to the AOLs and the Yahoos, try and use more of the Gmail accounts. It makes somebody be able to find you. You don't want somebody to have to remember that you are married, the player at AOL.com.
Oh my gosh.
So you want to make sure that they know who you are, that they can see Mary.Smith, they can find you. Make it easy for us to find you.
Now, sometimes, unfortunately, I found that there's other Vivian Gaspars in the world, unfortunately for me. So in the beginning, when I was creating new email addresses and it said, sorry, this is already taken, is it okay then to add a number just so, for example, it's vivian.gaspar10 at yahoo.com or something to that effect so you can still get your name in there?
I would do that. I would just eliminate your birth date. People put in...
Of course.
People
Just a
put
random
in,
lucky
right,
number, perhaps.
Right, a number that'll help you remember what it is. It's kind of
What's
like,
your favorite number?
It's kind of like remembering your password, you know, but remembering who you are, and just make sure to keep it professional and make it easy for someone to find you.
Now, speaking of numbers, we just had an expert on about credit. And how I understood it, and I've also been a recruiter once upon a time, land far, far away in New Jersey. And it wasn't even heard of back then, but things have evolved so much in the 34 years you've been a recruiter. And of course, social media has become a big player. But even a few years ago, I understand that unfortunately for people who are already in a crisis, they've had their credit taken a hit. So does credit still come into play as a potential employer, how they judge you because of your, well, they call financial responsibility picture?
Right. Sometimes it depends on the position you're going for. If you're having something to do with finance, or you're an accountant or a controller, or you're working at a bank, a lot of times that will have something to do with it. They're trying to make laws now because how can you fix your credit if you can't get a job?
Right. He just said that you have to pay down and you should optimally be at 30% usage. Well, if you can't pay your bills and you're because you're out of work or having to need to get a better job for simply, you know, you're in some kind of other crisis and you're maxing out or close to max out, well, how are you supposed to get the money to pay it down? So it's
Until
kind
you
of
get
like
a
a
job.
catch-22.
Right.
So how do you overcome that?
The only way you can do that right now is to fix your credit. Just be sure when you're interviewing, if somebody asks you, just be honest about what it is. A lot of times it's not what it is, but that you're not honest about it.
Now, even if someone's looking for a lower level job, I mean, not everyone's a high level professional.
Right.
So unfortunately, people look at, let's say you're a cashier and you're in charge of money wherever. They're also going to look at your credit to say, wow, if this person's so broke, they might be tempted to steal.
Take money.
Do you see that's the situation for someone in that aspect of potentially looking for a cashiering job?
That could be that. I don't deal so many in the cashiering, but I do deal with tellers.
Right,
And tellers,
similar,
tellers
dealing with
would
money.
be the same thing, and that's what the banks would look for to make sure that your credit is fine. So before you do that, check it. You know, you have people that have done that. You know, who can come in and evaluate your credit and help you make sure that it's proper and that it's a good credit, and then you can get a job.
What is one big tip you could leave people with? So, for example, what's a very common mistake that you see people make now? You could just tell them out right now, what should they not do?
You need to do your homework. When I started in this business, annual reports were a picture of the building. And you didn't, by opening the book, you had no idea what they did. Now there is no excuse for that.
Well, the age of Google, the internet, and Ask Siri. How could that be an excuse?
Ask Google. How many people knew 5 years ago that Google was a verb? Okay?
Or Siri is not a real person, it's hiding in the phone. No,
That's right.
These are resources, and we should research before you go into interview with the company, right? That's when you should research them.
You should research the company, but also use LinkedIn. If you can, you know the name of the person you're going to interview, look at the person.
Is it appropriate to ask to connect with them before or after the interview, though?
I would do it after.
Afterwards, okay.
They can always, when you've looked at them, they can tell that you looked at them.
And that's a still appropriate thing to do afterwards.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so one last question. Years ago, it was recommended to send out a thank you letter. Do you still do that?
Oh.
Is the thank you email enough?
I would do both.
Snail mail and email.
Yeah, we're into instant gratification. You leave, you write it down. Just do me a favor. Just make sure you spell it correctly.
Spell check. It's automatic. How could it not be?
Oh, please. I got one time. I always had people send it. Somebody suggested that I have somebody send it to me first. I had one from a gentleman. Now, he wasn't an 18-year-old kid. I really, 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 really want this job.
He had like 5 reallys.
5 reallys. It's like, it needs to be professional.
And the end result matters. And of course, most importantly, make sure the resume fits the job opening.
That's right.
Thank you, Joanne, very
Thank
much
you very
for joining
much.
us.
Spills of hazardous chemicals, toxic smoke in the air, By law, every town and county in New Jersey must have an up-to-date emergency response plan available to its employees, emergency response workers, and the public. We can better prevent disaster if we're all prepared. For information, go to njwec.org or osha.gov. This message brought to you by the New Jersey Work Environment Council.
Welcome back to Stop My Crisis. I am your host, Vivian Gaspar, and right now we're here with Jesse Kellar to not just address crisis, but to stop an enormous problem that we have in this country. Over $25 billion is wasted each year by children who choose the wrong college for them. Welcome, Jesse. Jesse is the author of an upcoming book, The 10 Commandments of Choosing the College for You. She is really integral in how she approaches helping students find the perfect school for them, not just with her book, but also dealing with this enormous problem by youth mentoring and peer mentoring. Welcome, Jesse. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Jesse, tell me, how did you come up with this amazing concept? Is there anything else currently like this in the market?
After observing and encountering many students who struggled intensely with finding their correct college, and even after all that struggle, many of them chose the wrong college, I decided that that was a problem. So my first question is, okay, how big of a problem is this? And it turns out that over 1 million students a year, almost a third of all incoming freshmen, choose the wrong college each year.
I would think that's an enormous problem because it's not just they're going to college. Parents save and stress about how to pay for this college. So what is the average cost of college? It's now being wasted.
The average year of college nationally costs about $25,000.
$25,000 being
Yes.
thrown down the toilet when people save for this for years and then they worry about scholarship money?
Yeah, and you usually don't have much in terms of transfer credits. It's much more difficult to get scholarships as a transfer student than as an incoming freshman to begin with.
More importantly, at what age should they start this process? That would be my real first question.
Okay. The process of selecting a college, which does not start with visiting colleges, but just starting to think about it and build your resume, 9th grade.
What do you mean resume? I didn't know you needed a resume to get into college. What does that mean?
So some colleges actually do require that you submit resumes. However, most colleges just have very resume-like processes on their applications. So you have to have your volunteer work. You have to have your, employment opportunities that you've taken. You have to have your grades. You have to have everything. Clubs that relate to your intended major or area of study. You need to start looking like you're interested in whatever you want to go into, starting with 9th grade. So that 9th, 10th, and 11th, let's say you want to go into robotics, you're in robotics club 9th, 10th, and 11th. Let's say that you want to go to art school, you have been in drawing club for those 3 years.
So let me ask this. If someone decides they want to go to college in 11th or 12th grade, is that already kind of too late to get into the best school for them?
It's not too late, but it does mean they have to work harder.
Okay, so here's my next question. So if someone who may have been traditionally learning from their parents or grandparents that just focus on their grades, and let's say they have a very great report card going through school, perhaps they've gotten almost straight A's, isn't that enough?
No. The vast majority of colleges now utilize something called holistic admissions. Holistic admissions refer to not just looking at your grades. Those are important. Don't see this and think, oh my God, I can get D's now. That's not what I'm saying.
What's the most important thing other than pretty good grades?
Aside from grades. Okay. Aside from grades, volunteering is the most impressive thing, but the most important thing is actually a variety of activities. So 3 to 5 solid activities that you participate in regularly. That's what you're going for. You want to be able to say, okay, I did a sport, even if it's just for 1 year, you did a sport. I participated in 2 clubs, and this is and here's 1 to 2 activities I do outside of school, plus my volunteer work.
Excellent information. Can you just give us a real quick takeaway?
Okay.
For example, is it SAT scores? Is that really important? Real quick.
The SAT scores are important, but they're not the only thing. SAT scores and ACT scores are second, and then extracurriculars run a close third.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That was fantastic information.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.